Hello, today is April 8th, and today we are going to be reading our processional gospel for this coming Sunday of Palm Sunday. As we look forward to this Sunday, it is also our Passion Sunday. So we will be reading the Passion as our primary gospel, Luke's account of the Passion, and as well as opening the service with the processional gospel. The processional gospel being Luke 19, Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. And so that's as we come into this beginning of Holy Week, we read not only Jesus's entry into the city, but also Jesus's arrest, his trial, and finally his execution. Looking forward to Good Friday and finally to the resurrection on Easter Sunday. But we are going to be focusing today not on our passion story, which is very long, but instead on our processional gospel, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem and the text that gives Palm Sunday its name. So let's read it. So Luke 19, verses 28 through 40. After he had said this, Jesus went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it.'" So those who were sent departed and found it as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They said, "The Lord needs it." Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. As he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. This gospel is as an introduction into Jesus' final act in the Gospels. Is an odd one. I think we kind of forget sometimes that this is a very strange story, especially in the details, because we always understand it as some sort of a triumphal entry into Jerusalem, that this is especially with the crowds and it says the multitude of the disciples saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." This is supposed to be this triumphal entry into the royal city of Jerusalem. In some sense, this is Jesus's greatest moment as the fulfiller of the messianic expectation, right? Because he is symbolically taking on a lot of the imagery that is associated with the coming of the Messiah. But it is still a strange story. He's coming into the city not on a horse, but on a colt, a donkey colt. So a young donkey, not a very tall, imposing creature that you ride in smoothly, but an unbroken donkey colt. So smaller, unsteady perhaps on its feet, unwilling to be led as much as a broken horse or donkey would. Sort of a comical animal, even if there are prophetic connections there to Zechariah and Zechariah's associations with the Messiah. This donkey colt is not, say, as imposing as a war horse or something like that would be. And Jesus is led down the street, and they're laying cloaks on the road, and it is a triumphal procession, but that it is entirely different than what we might associate with the normal coming of a king or a conquering king into a city. Um, the symbolism here is that Jesus is in some way slightly imitating the other ways that power is demonstrated at the time in this way. Because we also have to imagine, and this is a point that was raised the last time I had heard this story read, we have to imagine what's happening on another gate in the city around this time, because at this time, the Roman governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, is also coming into Jerusalem for the festival. It is his prerogative to ensure that peace stays in the Judea is a troublesome province for the Romans. He comes into the city of Jerusalem with a full cohort in order to maintain Roman control over the city at a time of high religious feeling, at a time when a lot of people are coming into Jerusalem to celebrate the holiday. He comes in with a full occupational force to ensure that peace, especially a Roman peace, is kept. So Pilate is coming into the gates on the other side, just as Jesus is coming in too. And I'm sure Pilate did not come in on a donkey colt. I'm sure he did not come in surrounded by peasants who were proclaiming prophecies from Isaiah. Instead, he is probably riding in on a war horse. He's surrounded by soldiers, and he probably would strike the sight of Pontius Pilate entering Jerusalem would probably strike more of a sense of power and fear than Jesus and his entourage coming into the city. It is almost as if they are two different, entirely different kinds of processions happening at the same time on a collision course to meet each other. Because Pilate, like the other Romans of his time, like most of ancient Rome, understood the power of display. They understood that there is a sense of that you get something from displaying power. The Roman triumph was a particular honor that would be given to conquering Roman generals. Julius Caesar had a massive triumph given to him after he defeated his enemies during the Roman Civil War. There were triumphs all through Roman history, and at that time, the general would be brought into the city and often portrayed as godlike in the city as a way of celebrating his particular military might. He's displayed, and as they would do that, they would bring in captives taken during their conquests. They would give away gold and slaves and whatever other plunder. They would give that away freely to the Roman populace. It was a way of demonstrating not only their own personal might, but the might and power of Rome, declaring Rome's right to rule as brutally as they possibly could, that Rome had a divine right to rule the world. And so that is an effective means of both boosting the Roman people's confidence in the Roman military might, in Romans' right to rule, but also a means of terrifying, frightening, cowing your enemies. That is the Roman way of demonstrating power. That's the Roman procession, the Roman triumph. Jesus is something entirely other. Because he is not on a war horse, because he is on the donkey colt, surrounded by his disciples, he is coming in not as a conquering warrior, but as the peaceful king. And when they praise God, as it says in verse 37, the multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen. those deeds of power, in Greek dunamis, those deeds of power, which is a phrase that gets used throughout Luke and throughout the other Gospels, but this is the same phrase that is used elsewhere in Luke. The deeds of power Jesus does are entirely located not in destruction, not in warfare, but in healings, in the exorcism of demons, in the feeding of thousands at a time. Jesus's deeds of power are not in destruction, but in healing, in binding the world together, in setting right what had been broken. Jesus's deeds of power are not the same deeds of power that Pilate would have used or would have understood or respected. And Jesus knows this. Jesus does not need to use the same kind of logic of striking fear in the enemies. Jesus does not operate at the level that Pilate operates at, because God doesn't need military might. God doesn't need violence or destruction to meet God's ends. God's power, the power which Jesus had and has, is the power to set things right, the power to reconcile all things to God. And so, in the face of that power, Pilate's power is nothing. In the face of God's power, the king who comes in the name of the Lord, Pilate is only ever going to be able to threaten death and destruction. A useless kind of power in the face of a God who brings resurrection, who answers death with life, who answers violence with peace and healing. That is the power of the king that we're talking about. That is the power of the king, of the true king, that we can join with the disciples at that time in saying, "Blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven, glory in the highest heaven." That's our processional gospel for this coming Sunday. I hope you can join us. I hope you have a good weekend. Okay, bye-bye.